Mistake number 2, selling ROI, return on investment, without regard to quote unquote hurdle rate or priority. I'm going to start this mistake by telling you a story. I met with a super smart enterprise account executive, and he was lamenting because he had lost a deal. And here's the story. He put together a rock solid, bulletproof business case that promised a $1 million return on investment over a year or so. He spent about 6 months on this deal. He navigated through several champions, and everybody agreed, this is the scary part, everybody agreed that the ROI was easily achievable. Maybe not easily achievable, but realistic. They believed that if they implemented his solution, they would achieve that $1 million promise that he was making. Now, even though everybody agreed with it, including the CFO, he ended up being told, let's revisit this in 6 months. And he was frustrated and confused. And what he said to me is, I don't understand why they didn't move forward. It was basically a guaranteed $1 million. And they still told me, let's revisit in the 6 months or in the next 6 months. So let's talk about what happened. Well, the main thing that happened is he didn't meet either a top priority or a minimum hurdle rate. You have to do at least one of those two, and we'll talk about what those mean, right? So this company he was selling to, even though they all agreed that $1 million could be returned by this project, they also realized it was going to take some work. They had to implement the solution, and they have a scarce resource, which is time and attention. And they can only spend their time and attention on so many things at once. And they chose to spend time and attention on other things that were either higher priority or that promised a higher return, either one or the other or both. So competing priorities and higher return projects took precedent because prioritizing is such a critical part of business. So the lesson here is your proposal, your offer, your solution could be a slam dunk return on investment, but that doesn't mean a CFO or even a CXO is going to be on board with pulling the trigger. Okay, so ROI by itself is critical. You need that, and I'm not discounting it. We're going to talk more about ROI in this course, but you need at least 2 of 3 of these, ideally all 3. Number 1 is rock solid ROI, which you already understand, and we'll talk more about that later. Number 2, that ROI has to be aligned with a top 5 or so company priority, right? If they have 5 priorities and your ROI case is rock solid, but it helps them make good on something that's not a priority beyond just dollars and cents, then they're probably not going to prioritize it, right? CFOs' first filters are, does this align with our company's priorities? We'll hear more from those CFOs later on that. Now, the other thing, the alternative to a top priority is a hurdle rate. Does it hit a minimum hurdle rate? Now, what's a hurdle rate? The hurdle rate is the minimum acceptable return on investment that will even get the attention of a CFO or other financial buyer. In other words, if their hurdle rate is a 30% ROI, they're not even going to look at anything that promises a 25% ROI because it's simply not worth their time. They have so many opportunities coming their way that they can't say yes to everything because these things usually take time to implement. And so they tend to have a hurdle rate for saying yes to things. Now, I put an asterisk next to hurdle rate very specifically because it's going to be easy for you to misapply the advice I just gave you if you don't listen to what I'm about to say. Sometimes CFOs do not want a huge ROI. Now, that sounds crazy. What am I talking about? CFOs are financial buyers. One of the things I learned from interviewing CFOs is they would much rather take small, quick win ROIs that promise smaller but quicker returns and less risk than some monstrous ROI that takes years to materialize. They perceive that as high risk, even though the total return is high. And so you have to be careful with the advice I'm giving you on hurdle rate yes, there is a certain hurdle rate that a lot of CFOs have, but most of the time, if you can sell quick win ROI that's below their hurdle rate and it aligns with a top priority, and it promises something in the future that if this initial project, this quick win project goes well, there's far more returns to be had. That is the creme de la creme of selling to CFOs. So the key lesson in this lesson is not to become obsessed with ROI. Okay, if all you do is talk about ROI outside of the context of their business's priorities and the CFO's priorities, you're going to get answers like this. Talk to us in 6 months. This is interesting. We have other priorities we need to tackle before we can consider this. So don't lose the forest for the trees and become obsessed with ROI and ROI alone. You do need to be very good at ROI, but if that's all you do, you're going to become tunnel visioned, and you need to make sure that ROI and your proposal is aligned with a value prop that helps them make good on a key priority for the company. If you do that and then make your bulletproof ROI case, you're going to be in a much, much better spot.